Hello. If you are a fan of the Alien franchise like I am, then you'll probably know that there have been many different ways to play games in the Alien universe, both in video games and at the tabletop. In recent years, there has been a role-playing game designed by Free League that has just received its second edition, the Evolved Edition. The generous folks at Free League actually sent me a copy of the core rules and some of the other box sets so that I could play around with it and tell you what I thought about the game. So that is what this is going to be. My review and overview and exploration of Alien, the role-playing game. Alien, the role-playing game, was first released by Free League in 2019, and there were loads of expansions released for it. But last year, they ran a Kickstarter for a new edition, the Evolved Edition, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, that first edition was not a game that I had played. I admired it from afar, but as with a lot of games these days, there's just too much awesome stuff out there. It can sometimes be tough, even if you want to play a game, it can be tough to find the time to actually play it. But when I was approached by Free League about reviewing this version of the game, I made sure I made time to play it because I really wanted to get involved. It was a good excuse to get this to the table so that I could talk about it with you guys, which I will be doing in my review and sort of, I guess, unfiltered thoughts here. I've been giving this consideration about what's the best way in which to construct a review, and I've tried scripting things out and playing around with it and creating an enormous sort of in-depth thing. I just don't think that I can sort of piece those parts together in a satisfying, interesting way that actually you guys will enjoy. So this is going to be more of a stream of consciousness as I share my thoughts about the initial game, the presentation, the rule system, playing it, and how I have approached playing with it, and just some of my broader thoughts about this as a game set. So that's what you will be getting. As I say, I received this copy, or all of these, for free from Free League. So that is a factor that I've tried to minimize as much as possible, but it's always difficult to take that out of consideration. So just bear that in mind. Also, I am a huge fan of Aliens. So being able to play it in the Alien universe, it's always going to be something that is exciting to me. It's always going to spark a lot of inspiration and excitement and passion. So that's definitely a factor as well. So when it comes to any kind of like actual review, I'm not going to do scores and I'm not going to do sort of hard recommendations. This is very much just my own personal opinion as a fan, as someone who got these for free, who just enjoys playing role-playing games and wants to share that with you. Basically, think about this as if we have gone down to the pub or to the cafe, we're having a quick drink, and you've asked me what I thought of this game that I've recently been playing. And that is what you're going to get, just a friend's opinions about a game. If you don't want to stick around for the entire video, the very quick summary is that I think that this game is really, really fun. It is very immersive, it really sets up the Alien universe, it gives you all of the tools you need to explore those movies and those comics and those books in whatever way you want, and it has a really elegant game system that is fantastic at fast-paced stealth and action and horror. The presentation is beautiful, the actual adventures are really interesting and have some cool stuff in. My only misgivings really are that some of the systems and the actual nature of the Alien franchise and universe doesn't always feel like it lends itself that well to campaign play, in my opinion. It's sometimes tricky to see how you would build multiple adventures with the same characters and string together longer stories because of just the actual Alien storylines are always about these one-shot, one-off kind of events. Yes, there's Ripley, but things don't always pan out for characters across multiple stories in this franchise. So that's kind of my only real issue. If I was just looking for one-shots in the Alien universe, I think that this game is pretty much perfect, to be honest. And if you want the chance to win all of these sets that I'm talking about in this video, go to patreon.com/JordanSorcery because they are all available, all up for grabs. Very simple question, and anyone can enter for free. So because I haven't played the first edition, I don't know what they've changed for this edition. This is the Evolved Edition core book. It is a very lovely book. In terms of presentation, there's just some really nice design. I do know that they changed it from having black, dark pages with the text on to being white pages with the text on, which I think makes it a lot more readable. It is really nicely designed, just in terms of the sort of graphical design, the way in which all of the charts and the diagrams and all of that are put together, and then some really nice art as well, that very much gives you the sense of the sort of alien universe. You get the technical aspects, you get that this is very much a corporate or a militaristic world where things are professional and put together in a certain way. In the right sense of it, it's kind of clinical in a way. But they've used some really nice colours. Just there's a green, sort of almost teal green text that's used for a lot of the font. That's really, really nice. I think it's very nice to look at, and it very much it's very evocative of the classic sort of game, the console screens that they have in Alien, in the first movie, and Aliens and stuff like that. So yeah, in terms of just pure production design, it's really, really nice. This book is great. One thing I will say that I did find a little bit odd is that the first edition's cover has got a very nice piece of artwork with an actual alien sort of stalking out of the darkness. They've replaced that on this Evolved edition with the facehugger, and then what I guess is a colonial marine with a flamer. There is a really weird, a very strange Photoshop element to this, where you can actually see that it's not a flamer that they have. They have some sort of rifle, pulse rifle maybe, and then they've just put the flamer effect over the top. So the barrel of the gun is just on fire. Now, I could be wrong. This could be a flamer, and it's just because it's in silhouette, it kind of has this weird vibe. I think it's an odd choice. I don't think this is as nice a cover as the first edition cover. That's just me. It's obviously not a major problem. It was just a bit of a surprise when I first opened it up, but the contents within are gorgeous, and I've got to say that in the starter set, Hope's Last Day, which is a beefy starter set with loads of stuff in it, and the 2 adventures that I received, the actual production quality across the board is fantastic. These boxes are amazing. They're sturdy. I don't know if you've ever had starter sets. I lament the fact that my much loved Legends of the Five Rings, that the more recent edition that was done by FFG and is now done by Edge, that edition has a great starter set that is in the flimsiest box imaginable, and I find it's very frustrating. But this is a real meaty box that's great. It's got a great cover, so that's good. And then inside, you get your starter characters, pre-generated characters, which are all really nicely done. It's a very nice, readable character sheet. Again, they're using this really nice green color, really nice art style, which I believe is just a carryover from the first edition. You get your rules reference, you get your actual core rule book, which is very accessible, gives you everything you need to know to actually sort of start playing the game very, very quickly. It is a very easy system to learn, I think. And then you also get a deck of cards, which features things like personal agendas, and we'll come back to those. Every single character has one. They're really important. But then there's other stuff like initiative cards and things like that. And you get your dice, and you get your maps. There's loads of maps. This is a game that loves maps. In the starter set, in both adventures, the maps are a big part of it. And I believe that is because there's a bigger emphasis in this edition on stealth and sort of moving around. I guess that is a big part of the Alien franchise, is that kind of, the alien is stalking through the station or the ship. They've really leaned into trying to create that. And that is also why you get an alien, a sort of a basic alien drone, or as some people would call them, a xenomorph. You would get those, a very nice model in the starter set as well. And then you also get an adventure. And tokens, of course, as well. And the adventure, Hope's Last Day, is built around the Hadley's Hope, which is a colony in Aliens, which is, you see a little bit of at the very start, but by the time the colonial marines get there, obviously all hell is broken loose. The aliens are about, and this is what happens immediately before that, which I think is a very cool idea, a very nice lead into playing in the Alien universe. So how does the basic game play? Well, it is actually really very simple. Every single character has 4 different attributes. You have strength, agility, wits, and empathy. And then for each one of those, there are 3 different skills. For instance, for agility, there is mobility, piloting, and ranged combat. Each of these skills and attributes will have a score somewhere between 2 and 5. And when you want to actually perform an action, you're going to take a basic test and you will add those 2 numbers together. So for instance, if I want to use my pulse rifle and shoot at an alien, I will take my agility of 4, my ranged combat of 3, and that is how many d6 I'm going to be rolling. On those dice, I'm looking for 6s. If I roll 1 6, it is a success. Obviously, more 6s, and we build up sort of degrees of success, and we can do more stuff. But essentially, a 6 is a success on any of those dice. Fantastic. But here is where the complication comes in, because sometimes you're also going to be rolling a special type of dice called a stress dice, and these can get nasty. So you see that dice pool that you've added together between your skill and your attribute, you also have to roll a stress dice for each level of stress that you currently have. Now, to start with, that's probably going to be 0, but over the course of the game, you're going to be building up more stress. And that means you're going to be rolling more of these dice, which also have 6s on, which is fantastic. They can contribute to successes. But they've also, on their number 1, they've got a little face hugger, a little nasty chappy, who is going to give you a stress response. These stress responses are things like getting the shakes or tunnel vision or aggravated, and they can have a negative effect on your skills, your attributes, and other game elements. So the more stress that you build up, the more likelihood that you will get a stress response, and something bad is going to happen as a result, which makes subsequent tests a little bit harder. When you fail a basic check, you can actually push it and try again, but you are voluntarily adding stress. And there are other ways to get stress through the course of the adventure as well. Like when you see an alien for the first time or something horrific, that might give you some stress automatically. So this stress level continues to build and build and build, and you get to this point where you're rolling as many stress dice as you are regular dice, meaning that you're just as likely to succeed as you are to have a stress response to the things that you're encountering. It's a really nice system. It feels so much like the movies. You feel like you are characters who are continually getting wound tighter and tighter and tighter. The more stuff that you're encountering, the more dangers, the more horrors, the more stuff that you see in this adventure, the worse things start to feel, and the more likely you are to really get into some trouble. I mean, you can get this very cool like elements like you're at maximum stress, you're trying to open up the door of a particular hangar bay to escape or something, and you're trying to push the buttons on the thing, but because you're getting increasingly stressed, it's getting harder to keep your fingers, like, actually keep control of them and keep them straight so you can actually press the buttons. The stress level absolutely represents what you would imagine your character to be going through in those moments. So it really does contribute to that kind of feeling that you would anticipate a lot of characters having in an alien movie scenario. In fact, the entire rule set really is designed to help you create these immersive, horror-based, cinematic feeling scenarios and gameplay sessions. All of the rules basically fit on a 2-sided rules reference sheet. This has got your panic responses, your stress responses, it's got stealth rules, it's got pretty much everything you need for the majority of the core mechanics. Obviously, there's a lot more stuff in that core rulebook, lots of ways to add different complications and additional equipment and additional stuff. You can expand this to your heart's content, but the core engine is really slick, it's really nice, very, very simple. Just rolling those dice and doing those basic tests with your D6s. 6s are always successes. 1s on stress dice are always a bad thing. That keeps things really nice and easy, so you can concentrate on the drama and the horror that you're building up through the course of the adventure. One of the things that I like about the way that this game has been put together is that they're very aware, the designers know that you're creating an alien scenario. You're trying to capture the essence of those films in some way. Now, whilst that does include fighting and shooting and all sorts, these enemies, the aliens themselves, are very difficult to kill, and you can't really create like a dungeon crawl in a traditional RPG sense. So they have built in something called stealth mode, which is designed to simulate those moments in movies when people are going down corridors, they're enacting a plan, they're trying to evade or find an alien, and they're doing so slowly and carefully. This type of gameplay sequence, I think, is a really interesting idea. It's about sort of slowing the game down and to heighten tension to give you this kind of slightly different feel to a traditional sort of social interaction and to the combat interactions that you'll also have. For me, I'm not entirely convinced that I actually needed it to be a sort of its own kind of rule element. There's not too many specific rules to it. Basically, you if you identify the alien or the alien sees you, you snap out of stealth mode and go back into the sort of traditional gameplay. But it's more about sort of elongating time. I think it's supposed to give you the space sort of at the gaming table to kind of say, right, we're in stealth mode now. Things are becoming a lot more slow and careful and considered, and that will inevitably heighten tension. That makes a lot of sense. I think it will work best using maps and using counters and miniatures, because then it's very much the thing you're seeing on the tabletop is being replicated in how you're talking about those sequences. So for me, because I played all of my games online and we didn't use miniatures, we didn't use the maps in quite the same way, the stealth elements didn't feel quite as necessary. Like, it naturally became stealthy. It naturally became tense because of the narrative immersion. So rules weren't necessarily required at my table for that element, but I love that they are considering it and they're saying, listen, if you are playing this closer to a miniatures game, a role-playing game with miniatures, then this is how you change the tone of those sequences. So I respect that, and I think that is a really nice idea to have included something to that end, even if not everyone is going to need it, because the story will sort of take care of it for some games, some scenarios, in some ways. And then there's that deck of cards as well, which includes these agendas. Now, I won't read the personal agendas out because it will be a spoiler for the actual adventures, but each different character each of the pre-generated characters in the starter set and in the other adventures as well comes with different personal agendas for each act of the game. And this is something that's built into their sort of cinematic mode of play. So you can play either a cinematic, which is kind of more of a one-shot, closer to the films, essentially, or you can play as a sort of campaign game where you will have continuing consequences and game to game to game. The more cinematic side of things almost inevitably demands that characters probably will die by the end of it, because you're setting up situations like the movies where at least some characters, NPCs or PCs, are not going to make it out because of the threat level is so high. But the personal agendas are designed to help you between acts reward really sort of immersive and characterful play. So the personal agendas also allow you to, essentially, it kind of nudges people towards playing up to their character, whether that is a snivelling corporate suit like Burke, who has his own agenda, or someone who's a bit more noble, or someone who's just there because they've got a job to do, or what have you. It gives you that extra impulse for, my character would act this way in a given scene. But it allows for a bit of PvP as well. Because if you've got a Burke on your team who's like, I want to capture an alien, and I'm going to put that as a priority over everything else, you've now kind of got a rules-based way of doing that. Because they will have their personal agenda. Those personal agendas might change from act to act as more information becomes available, as more stuff happens. So it doesn't always have to be from the very start of the adventure, this character wants to betray everybody and capture an alien, but it can evolve into that. Or it can go the other way. They start off being all about the corporation and the suits and Joylin, and then they find out by the end, okay, actually, my agenda has changed and I want to save myself, even if it means everyone else dying. Or I've seen the light and I want to try and help other people. So you kind of get those kind of cool moments. And the game mothers, in this game they're called game mothers rather than game masters, they can reward players between acts who live up to their character, give them story points that allow them to influence their dice rolls in the actual gameplay. So you are rewarded for living up to your character and following your personal agendas, even if they are against the rest of the party, which I think is really nice. Mechanically, it's a really nice way to bake in that paranoia that is very present in Aliens, and also a bit of the sort of selfishness that's almost inevitable in these kind of life or death versus an alien situations. It's nice. I like it. I think it's great. Having them on cards is really nice as well. Again, if you're in person, I think having these and being able to give these out to players so they can take a look at them and keep them in mind is a really nice touch. Because we were playing online in the games I played, I just did it all through chat. I sent WhatsApps to people, or I sent chats on Zoom and that sort of stuff. So people could always sort of see what they had. The other cards that are in here are things like weapons and equipment and various other things of that nature. So lots of cool reference material in this box set that really does get you started. I think with this starter set, I don't want to say something's missing, because it's absolutely not. I think as a starter set, the adventure is really neat. It's got some cool characters. It's got some neat ideas. The rules set is very, very good, very accessible, really gets you started. You get your dice, you get your miniature, you get your maps and your cards and all that sort of good stuff. So it's a fantastic box set. It really is a very good starter. I also like, and maybe I've been spoiled by certain other starter sets here and there, but I also like getting a kind of a world book as well. So I don't just get the starter adventure and the rules, I also get here's what might happen next. So that is not in here. You do get a great scenario. I'm being very, very entitled and saying, wouldn't it be cool if you also got even more? So you don't need it. It's not a necessity, but I enjoy getting that kind of stuff. But when you come to the core book, you get loads of world building and loads of material to help you play and expand your world and just see where else you want to go in the Alien universe. And then we get to what I guess, I don't want to say it's not a problem, but it is a concern for me around the game. And it's true, I think, of a lot of different IP-related games, in fact. Because this is based on a series of movies, and each of those movies are essentially a sort of discrete adventure. That is a big part of how the adventures are structured for this game. And I think it's also how a lot of players coming to this game would anticipate the game's playing out. And what I mean by that is the setup for an Aliens adventure is probably a load of people who have never encountered an alien before find themselves in a situation where one or maybe multiple aliens have now arrived on their spaceship, on their space station, on their planet, and all of a sudden they are thrust into this life or death sort of survival period where they're trying to evade the alien or trying to discover what's happening, find clues, work out what's killing the other people on the station, and stuff like that. And then you get to a final act where now everybody understands it's an alien, but most people are dead, and you haven't got much equipment, and you're going to have to try and fight it using mops and buckets and stuff like that. That, I think, is the sort of standard Alien structure. Now, obviously, there are some movies in the franchise that take a different tack, but even movies like Aliens, where you have a group of heroes who go in, roughly knowing what they're going into, even they, with all of their equipment and all of their weaponry, end up in the same situation. They end up with not all of their weaponry, and many of them are dead, and they've only come to understand later on what they're actually facing, and it kind of becomes a last stand situation. That kind of structure, that arc of adventure, feels very, very baked in to the Alien setting, to me, at least. So, my concern, I guess, is the sort of long-term replayability for this game. Playing one-offs, playing the starter set, I actually created my own adventure, which I'll talk about in a minute. I had so much fun doing that. I thought it was really awesome, just playing around in this universe and kind of creating stuff. Really, really fantastic stuff. And my players had a fantastic time as well. I loved playing this game. I think it's awesome. But do I imagine I could play it every single week for the next year? probably not without some kind of really creative thinking around how to turn it into more of an ongoing campaign. And even with the actual adventures that I was sent, so Rapture Protocol, which I thought was really cool, had a lot of very cool ideas in here, and Heart of Darkness, again, another very cool start adventure that's part of a longer campaign. Within these, even, there is sort of a very real possibility of character death, which you would expect in this universe, but that also makes it difficult to then sort of build continuity for a campaign. And if you can get around that by having multiple characters, and the story that you're telling is what continues between adventures. But it's tricky to do that and invest the same level in that story when your characters are constantly dying off, even if you intend that to be the case. So that's quite tricky, I think, for the campaign version of this game. Playing one-off adventures, perfect. It's absolutely incredible for that. Playing campaign adventures that actually end with characters all dying, also, it works very well for that, and you can kind of have new information is revealed, even if a load of characters on a spaceship that's carrying an alien, they all die, that might reveal something for the larger plot that then is picked up on in the next adventure where your players are playing different characters and they continue with it and so on and so forth. You can absolutely do that. But that's a different kind of campaign to a lot of traditional role-playing game campaigns. And I think you'd really need your players to understand that going in, and you would need your campaign GM to really build around that and make that a big part of how they're telling a story that is satisfying to the players and that the players want to tell as well. So obviously, it's not just the GM story. You need them to have agency and feel like they can sort of direct some of it as well. So that is the sort of bigger issue I have. And this is I don't know that it's an unfair issue to have, but it's an issue that they can only go so far in solving because so much of it comes down to how your players and your GM tackle long-form storytelling. If you're trying to collaboratively tell a story about corporations gone mad and aliens making their way to Earth or what have you, you can definitely do that with this system, and this is a very elegant gameplay system that allows that. But it also feels, in a lot of the modules and in the design, like it's best suited to one-offs and kind of connected one-offs, if you like, as opposed to something that's sort of more drawn out as a story. I guess that's also true of the Alien universe in other media as well. I think if you take a look at Alien Earth as a TV show, for me personally, and I'm not going to make this into a review video of the TV show Alien Earth, but I think it's relevant here, a lot of amazing ideas, but the way in which it was executed as a long-form story left me quite unsatisfied. And I think there's a lot of things that could be explored and could be done with aliens and Earth and all of the extra menagerie of monsters that are in that show, which I think are very cool. There is more you could do to tie that together into a satisfying storyline. And I actually think if I were going to run and dedicate myself to a proper Alien RPG campaign, you could take the base of something like Alien Earth, where it is about these corporations at loggerheads, an alien ship or a ship carrying aliens arrives on Earth, and now you've got a load of creatures in containment on Earth. I think I would tell that story at multiple levels. And in a campaign for this game, I would have the PCs create multiple characters for different levels of the story. So they would have their own board executives at the rival corporations. They would have like espionage specialists and sort of corporate sabotage specialists. They would then also have Marines and guards and medics who are involved in sort of on the ground stuff. And then also scientists who are researching these aliens in these contained spaces. And we would be telling each week a different part of the story, and we'd be jumping back and forth and sort of revealing things, and you'd have interaction between these different character groups. And some of these character groups would die, obviously, because the aliens presumably would escape, or someone would do something stupid, or mistakes would pile up. and then you would bring them all together. You'd have the story continues across all of these the same story continues across all of these different sessions with these different groups, but it comes to a satisfying conclusion that the players have been able to influence at every level of the story. So I think it is possible, but I think that is a lot of work to conceive of and to run, and for players to really immerse themselves and engage with. It's a tough one. So this is just a general point, I guess, around how you want to run your campaign. If you're looking for an RPG that is just full on aliens, you've got colonial marines, you've got space stations, spaceships, you've got like creatures running around, you're going to need to respond and react, and you're going to be playing like with the stress and the horror. This game nails it. It's fantastic. It is Alien 1, the first movie. It is the best elements of that, absolutely. It's Aliens. It's the best elements of that. It is very, very successful at doing that. So if that's what you're looking for, I would heartily recommend checking this out and giving this some consideration. As much as I said I wasn't going to recommend anything, what I am saying that I think that this is a really good game for that. I think the system is so elegant, and there is so much material here for those kinds of games that, yeah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So that is where I'm at. I think in terms of if you're looking for a continuous campaign and you want to be able to spend the next 3 years playing the same adventure, you want your, whether it's the Enemy Within for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, or you want the Call of Cthulhu Horror on the Orient Express, or these kinds of epic, long-running adventures and campaigns, I don't know that they are as... I don't know that this is as fully built around that kind of gameplay. What I will say in favour of the core rulebook, though, is that there is a lot of material provided to help you build campaigns that lead up to an alien encounter. They specifically say you're not going to put a xenomorph into every single adventure because that doesn't make any sense. In campaign play, there's loads of stuff here around like generating spaceships, in generating planets, generating different enemies, and having lots of different critters to face, all of this kind of stuff. They do suggest build it around, you get involved with corporations and enemies and rivals and all that sort of stuff. So I do think that they are well aware of this, and they've tried to combat that in the core rules. It just is it's a tricky thing to deal with, because it would require a core rule book, a full book on its own, just to do campaign play, I think. But this core book, has loads of other material as well. There's loads of technology, there's loads of gear, there's loads of stuff about corporations and planets. They have really gone into very deep detail on basically everything you've encountered across the Alien franchise to this point. There's a huge amount of time invested in just really bringing things to life, giving you so many options for your characters, for things that you'll get involved with, for different kind of standard missions, different ships you would be on, different weapons you would use. Some very lovely recreations of like the Nostromo and the Sulaco and stuff like that. So it is great. It's really, really nice. There's also expanded universe stuff with different corporations and governments and things of that nature. So if you are an Alien fan, this book has loads of material that really is just fun to spend time with. Literally just teasing out other aspects of the Alien universe. It ties into different movies. It ties into different books and stories. There's also lists of inspiration you can take from other sources as well, which I think is great. So as a package, there is a lot here for the Alien fan, whether or not you run it week in, week out for actual sort of campaign play. There's plenty of stuff here to just sink your teeth into and create your own games in your own world, have some fun. And that is exactly what I wanted to do. So you see, this book here, which is the Book of Alien, actually came out alongside the original movie. And the reason I have a copy is not just because I love Alien, but also because this book has been cited as having been relevant to the development of Games Workshop games and 40k in particular. Now, anybody who watches this channel knows that I spend a lot of time in the history of Warhammer trying to understand how these things were created and evolved. Alien being a huge influence on 40k in some ways in that early days, Obviously, things like the Gene Stealers are pure aliens, but there's other things about the sort of the nature of that universe and the way in which it functions, and the cynicism and the rundown nature of an alien spaceship, for instance. A lot of that stuff played a role in 40K's development. So that's why I've got this book, because I wanted to see this book, what it was telling people at the time, because this was also a book that was in the Citadel studio and people were passing around and taking inspiration from. And in it, there are some absolutely stunning pieces of art. There's lots of original concept art by Ron Cobb and by Chris Foss and by other amazing artists, including a very neat design for just a really cool, I don't know if I'll be able to find it now, but they're very cool asteroid-based mining platform, which is alluded to in the first Alien movie. They are space truckers, of course, in Alien, and they are transporting on the Nostromo a refinery that is actually processing a load of material that they're going to be taking to wherever it's headed. I really like the idea of that asteroid-based actual mining facility that the Nostromo might go to. So I tried to create, inspired by the art from this book, I tried to create my own adventure that was very much about, it was basically a recreation almost of Alien 3. But instead of prisoners on a prison world, these were indentured staff, so white-collar criminals or people who had defaulted on loans to the corporation, who were having to pay off their debts by working on this asteroid mining facility. And then there's a handful of traditionally employed staff as well on this mining facility that's quite run down, that's past its prime, that's out in the middle of nowhere, doesn't really get a lot of supply runs or anything like that. There is an asteroid, meteor shower rather, of this sort of black ice meteors, and encased in one of them that hits the hab block and destroys it and causes a load of problems. Encased inside that, there is an alien, and obviously the leadership unfreeze this alien. They accidentally chop off its arm, and then it is loose on this station. And because this station is actually a mining facility and a processing facility, the acid that's constantly leaking from this wounded alien is threatening to get through the bottom of the station and into all of the piping for all of this processing. And at some point, so there's this ticking clock, at some point that station is going to explode. So you've got this time-based scenario. There is an alien loose on the station. There's been all of these sort of compromises to the station itself because of the asteroids that have hit it, the meteor shower, really to try and ramp up the tension, kind of create this situation where the heroes, players, have got to respond initially to that meteor shower and try and sort of solve some technical stuff and kind of build a bit of tension in that way. But then once the alien is loose, now it's about survival, and it's about how do we get everybody off who's still alive and all of that kind of good stuff. So very much modeled on the Alien movies, the Alien movies from the franchise that I really love. And this, using that sort of homebrewed adventure with this rule set, I just had an incredible amount of fun. So I was able to get a couple of groups to play through this adventure. I think, and I did ask for feedback, and hopefully everybody's honest. I don't want to blow my own trumpet too much, but I think that it made for a really cinematic experience. This game allowed for that very much Alien adventure. It felt like we were playing through a movie from the franchise. All of the players, because they're big fans of Alien as well, and they're really good role players, they were just fully bought in. And I think that's one of the strengths of a game like this, because the IP is so strong and so familiar and so well known. People can come in and they can understand what they're supposed to do, what their character is supposed to do. It's a double-edged sword, because you're going to have people who think in terms of, okay, I already know it's an alien, so I know I can do this. I know I'm going to be able to do that. I'm going to optimize for this. But if you get good players who are very much like, well, my character doesn't know that, and I want to play my character, and I want to create this situation of horror, of tension, then I think it really enables that really very well. I do just want to take a moment to talk about these maps. I mentioned them before, but they are genuinely amazing. Really, really nice. All of the boxes come with them. And you won't be able to hear me from behind this, but they're just really, really well done. They look amazing. And they're very big. I don't know if this will have been a useful video or review for pretty much anybody out there. Essentially, I know that most reviews are probably better if they're shorter and they're snappier and they have a very quick summary and a conclusion that people can take away and scores and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, I didn't really feel like it was right to just boil this thing down, especially across 4 separate products, to boil it down to just, I'm scoring it this for presentation and this for gameplay. I think ultimately, I have enjoyed playing this game. I've really enjoyed scaring my friends and creating these scenarios and just and being in the Alien universe. There is so much material here. I think that you absolutely, even with my qualms about campaign play and sort of how that would work, just for like multi-session adventures and scenarios, there's a huge amount of material here, and I don't think that you would get tired of it very quickly, because there is a lot of inventive science fiction storytelling happening in these scenarios. Both of the adventures here, Heart of Darkness and Rapture Protocol, they take the alien mythos and they explore it in interesting ways, and they kind of give you jumping on points and jumping off points that will let you do longer campaigns. There's a lot of stuff around cults who have become obsessed with the alien and are really like trying to capture it and worship it and sort of propagate it across the universe. That kind of thing I think is really important, because that gives you lots of other agendas and rivalries. And yes, you've got the corporations, but you've also got these guys. I think also, taking from recent and well, I guess the entire franchise as a whole, but synthetic artificial people and like what those corporations are doing and how they want to use the alien and this kind of stuff. That is all great. There's lots of material for you to explore. And if you're a big fan of this universe, you're going to have a great time. If you're looking for a one-off adventure, you're also going to have a great time, but you're probably not going to need all of these supplements. You could probably get away with just the starter set, and you'll be able to run adventures in this setting, especially if you're going to homebrew your own, without any trouble. I don't think you wouldn't need to get into any more material. But if you really love the universe and you'd want to be able to just get new information about worlds and people and corporations, then the starter box, the core book, is also going to be really relevant as well. So there's a lot here that you can enjoy. And because it's Free League, and as you will have seen if you've ever owned any Free League product, the actual production quality is fantastic. I think, with the exception of that one very nitpicky thing that I pointed out on the cover, the production is amazing across the board. Like, I think the quality of the components is top notch, and I think the design of everything is absolutely brilliant as well. So, there you go. That's my summary, I guess, is that I think that this is great, and it's going to totally depend on what you want out of an Alien RPG. If you've already got the first edition, I don't know if there's enough material in the sort of core book to warrant upgrading. It's certainly beautiful, and it's certainly got lots of cool stuff in it. If you have never played this game before, then there's probably some fun stuff for you to get into here. And if you're planning a long campaign, then these adventures probably will give you a load of material as well. So I think it's pretty cool if you want to play games in the Alien universe. If you don't, then I don't know why you're watching this video or interested in this game, because it is dripping with that Alien franchise and the sort of vibes and the feel of it. They've done a great job in capturing that. So I think it's a big success. I'm very pleased that I got to play it. I'm very grateful to Free League for sending me these. I'm going to be giving these away on my Patreon. So if you want to check out patreon.com/Jordan Sorcery, you can get your hands on these 4 sets at some point in the near future. So go and check it out. You'll see it come up. It's not that I don't want to play loads more of it, because I think it's awesome. It's merely I haven't got space on the shelf. There's it, and it's. I want someone who will get loads of use out of it to get it, because it's so cool. It's really good. Okay, there you go. One of these days, I hope I get better at making reviews. Hopefully this is helpful to you. If not, hopefully you enjoy just listening to me ramble about a game that I had a lot of fun with for an extended period of time. In any case, I'm sure we'll be back to our regularly scheduled Warhammer history soon, so keep an eye on the channel. Man of War is on the way, hopefully not too far off. Until then, thank you again to Free League for sending me these. Thank you for watching. I'm Jordan, and this is Jordan Sorcery. I really wish that I had a microphone next to this box so that you could hear Martha snoring, because she properly sounds like an alien right now. It's very funny.